Hi, I'm Chris Blair, and I am the retirement counselor here at the Kenwood by Senior Star. We are a full retirement community. We offer independent, assisted memory support nursing care. And I've been doing this, gosh, I hate to say this, about 33 years now. This is all I've ever done. Also, I'm a nurse and kind of got into the retirement field about probably about 27 years ago. But what I'm doing today is what I've noticed over the years, the questions haven't changed all that much. So we thought, well, we'll go and reach out to everyone and just kind of educate you on some of the basic questions that hopefully that will help you as you start to look for a parent or even for yourself. So if you're seeing or hearing what you like, if you can just like us on Facebook, we'd appreciate it. That way we know we're kind of touching the audience out there and what you want to hear. We'd appreciate it. It's a little feedback, or you can type in your question and hopefully I can answer you. So we're going to get started. The first question that I get all the time, constantly, is what is my Medicare going to pay? So what does your insurance pay? And basically it pays nothing. So kind of how to break that down a little bit, there's two areas of insurance. You have Medicare, or actually three. You have Medicare, you have Medicaid, and then you have long-term care insurance. So to kind of how to keep them all separated and keep so you know what pays what, just think of it this way. Medicaid, just think of aid. I will aid you financially, so financial aid. So those are for folks whose financial resources have kind of dwindled down. It's usually around $1,500 in assets. That's when you can start to apply for Medicaid. Now, Medicaid typically only pays for long-term nursing care. Doesn't pay for typically independent living communities. There are some communities here in the Cincinnati area that does have what they call the Medicaid waiver program for assisted living. There's not many out there in the community that accepts Medicaid. It's actually called the Medicaid waiver program. And the reason for that, the reimbursement is so low. So that's why there's not that many communities out there. So that's one part, so that's Medicaid. The other part is Medicare. And Medicare, think of it this way, Medicare says, I'm going to care for you for a short period of time. So Medicare will only pay if you go to a rehab. It's not going to pay for an independent living apartment. It's not going to pay for your assisted living apartment or memory support. And it's not going to pay for you if you need to live long-term in a nursing care. So it's only going to pay if you've been in the hospital for a short term, and or you've been in the hospital, and if you've been in the hospital at least 3 days. If you've been in the hospital at least 3 days, Medicare says, well, I might pay for you to go to a rehab if you need some physical therapy. If you need, maybe you've had open heart surgery and you need a nurse to kind of monitor your cardiac functions, and you need a physical therapist to come in. So then Medicare says, hey, yeah, I'll pay for you to go to a rehab, but I'm only going to pay for you short term. So when you're looking at retirement communities, the assumption's always made that Medicare pays some of this, and they don't. Now, if you live in a retirement community and you need maybe just your physical therapy, or you need some occupational therapy, yes, Medicare will pay for that service, but they're not going to pay for your room and board or what most people are asking, their rent. If you also have maybe like an HMO or anything like that, it pretty much follows the same guidelines of Medicare. Again, they're only going to pay for like a nursing home area. So I get that question a lot, and again, I just want to kind of go over the common questions. This is kind of like a real informal 101 type of thing. So, having said that, as folks go out into the retirement world to look at communities, they ask the the typical questions. What size of an apartment do you have, and what type of amenities do you have, and the features and things, and that's great, and I think you need to know that, but they're still not asking the right questions. And, when people go to a retirement community and they're looking for their parent or they're looking for themselves, it does boil down to the care. If the care is not good, it doesn't matter what the building looks like. So the things that you need to ask, how's your staff turnover? How much staff do you have? How long has your staff been there? So, and as you walk throughout the building and you're looking around and, you see how great all the places are and, oh, they have this or they've got this beautiful area. Are the staff, are they greeting you? Are they smiling when they see you? Are they acknowledging the fact that you're even there? And then, as you walk by the staff members, engage in them. Ask them, how long have you been here? Why do you want to work here? And listen to their response. And I think that will be, an eye-opening experience on what type of response that you get from the staff. The other things that you need to look at, retirement communities as well, I get a lot of folks that come in through my independent that want to look at independent living. They've never done this before. They know we are a full retirement community, that we have assisted memory support and nursing, but they never go on to look into the healthcare side. Because at the moment, they only need independent, but realistically, that's why you're looking at a full retirement community, because you may need those services in the future. So it's always surprising to me that people come out and say, I only want to look at independent, but they never look at my assisted, my memory support, the nursing care. So I do try to explain to them what we do and our culture here, and that's what you need to do. So you need to go into those different levels and look at it, talk to the staff. You need to see what their surveys have been through the state. And you can go to Medicare.gov to see their survey results. And that will be a big indication of what type of care they deliver there at that community. You need to talk to the residents that actually live there. Stop them in the hallway when you walk by them and ask them, what's it like living here? How do you like it? What are the good things? What are the things that this community needs to work on? They'll be very honest with you and express to them their experiences, and it'll give you another indication of what that community's like. You also need to ask, people always assume, when I give you the monthly cost, that they're always assuming, okay, then that's it, let's move on. You need to ask, what are the extra charges? Are there anything that I need to know about? Do you have an entry fee? You need to ask those questions. Don't assume anything that is what it is. Ask what the other, and have them spell that out. Ask to see the lease agreement. Every community typically will have a lease agreement, so you need to ask those questions as well. So, again, like me on Facebook, if you're liking some of the things that I'm saying, that way kind of gives us an idea of what to kind of look for the next time we do this. So some of the other questions, let me go over. As you start to look at these retirement communities, and let's say you go from independent living, and maybe you move on into assisted living. So that's why it's imperative you know what the extra costs are. In assisted living, you're going to find every assisted living has what they call levels of care. Every level attaches a price. So you need to understand what those mean, and that's a whole 30, 40-minute segment within itself that we'll discuss later at another time. So that's why it's imperative that you know how much the costs are in the beginning. So that way, if you start to need those services, you're prepared for that. Now, when you do move into a licensed assisted living, memory support, or nursing care, the reason why the rent actually is more, because the 24 hours of care, it's built into that monthly rent. So there's a part of that you may be able to use as a tax deduction for medical expenses. And I find usually about 90% of my folks that come through, they're not aware of this. And that's a huge difference in that monthly cost that you may be able to claim off your taxes. So again, if you have a parent that's going into a licensed assisted living, memory support, or nursing care, there's a portion of that rent you may be able to deduct for medical expenses. And I usually see around 30 to 40% of the monthly rent, which is typically around $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So you do need to take a look at that. One of the other things I want to discuss, I've got some notes here because, again, I'm new at this, is when you I'm going to circle back to the retirement communities, that when you're looking back to assisted living and memory support and even nursing, is when you have a parent that moves in there, there's only so much care that that these programs can offer, that these levels of that assisted living can offer, memory support or nursing care, you need to ask, how much care can you actually give? Because at some point, that community is not able to offer all the care for assisted living for your parent, and may start to talk to you about why that next level of care is needed, which may be memory support, which may be nursing care. And you need to ask those questions. You know, how far can you take the care to help my mom or my dad? So then that way you can understand the journey that they can travel through, but at some point they need that next level. And those are things I don't think families realize or understand. So that's a common question that I get all the time. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was about home health. That is like the hot topic right now. There are tons of home health agencies out there, and there's a good time for it. You know, when you start to see a parent at home struggling, you know, they have they're having an emotional time with this, thinking about that next step. You know, so sometimes you need to bring in some home health. You need to do your due diligence, and you really need to be checking out the numerous different home health agencies that are there. And there are some good ones that are out there. Some of the home health agencies, you know, they can do the simple tasks and things and bring that into your home. But there also comes a time and place where it goes beyond the home health, where safety becomes an issue. And you also have to look at it from a socialization standpoint. Are your parents very socially isolated at home? And that's all they're seeing are the home health and just you coming in to visit. You know, a lot of the retirement communities offer just a wealth of socialization that, you know, being in your home, it can't do that. And the other things that it offers that you start to struggle with at home, you don't have access to all those medical resources. You know, whereas in retirement communities, you have access to the nurses and the doctors coming in. And, you know, if you needed blood work, we can do it right there in your apartment instead of having to go out to the doctors. And if you're at home, sometimes that becomes a little challenging to do all those things. So, you know, these are just some of the topics that gets brought up on a daily basis. And I just want you all to, when you go out to these retirement communities, these are some just very basic questions that you need to start asking. You know, you need to ask, now that you know what insurance pays and doesn't pay, you need to ask that person, you know, what's the lease agreement like? I want to see it. What are your extra charges? You need, it's imperative that you've got to go through the healthcare side. You need to go through assisted living and their memory support and their nursing care so you can see, you know, what other services are offered within that community. So I think we've got a question.
Aaron asks, who can you talk with to find out if you are eligible for assisted living or memory care?
So, well, what happens with assisted living and memory support, there's a fine line between the two, and I don't know all the circumstances of why you're asking, but what we do, we actually come to that person's home when they're considering the Kenwood, and we do an assessment, we do an evaluation. We want to make sure that we set this person up to thrive, and we don't want to bring them into an environment that they're going to fail at. So we go to their home. We like to be in their home environment where they feel comfortable. They're not as nervous like I am right now talking. They're not as nervous, and that way we can really do an evaluation to see where they're at. And what we're looking for is what type of physical care that they need, where they're at cognitively, and where that best suits them. Because we do anticipate when they do move in, you know, you do get a little bit more confused in things, so we do take that into consideration. And knock on wood, we've been very successful with our folks transitioning whether into our assisted living or memory support by doing that. So thank you for that question. I appreciate that. So, okay, so anyways, I want to thank you all for logging in today. This is my first Facebook Live, so I'm glad you were gentle. I appreciate that. We'll be doing more of these in the future. Please ask any more questions. One of the things that we're going to go over on the next Facebook Live is we're going to talk about levels of care within the assisted living program. I know what I'm doing, but it gets me confused. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that to help families when they do look at assisted living programs. What are levels of care? What makes a level of care? How much money is a level of care? What takes someone in and out of levels of care? So we'll be doing that in the future. So look for that as well. All right. Thanks for joining in. Have a good day.